Can you believe it's been 25 years already since this book? I'm actually older than the protagonist now. That's awesome. Hey, what's up, bookworms and constant readers? We're back one more time to go into the multiverse, and today, guys, it's back to 1998 to talk Bag of Bones by Mr. Stephen King. Now, this is the 23rd novel released under his own name. And yeah, like I said, I can't believe it's already been 25 years with this one, because I remember going to the store and picking this up on the day it released and sitting in the store and reading about the first third of it. And it's kind of funny back then, I was looking at it and being like, well, the protagonist is so old, and now I'm older than him, and that's just awesome. That's a theme I keep noticing on this great Stephen King reread that I am on. But yeah, I was 21 when I read it the first time. I'm 44 now, so exciting times, guys. 25 years later, do I feel differently? Well, I think so. And we're going to talk about why. We're going to begin, guys, by talking about what is this book about. Now, 4 years after the sudden death of his wife, 40-year-old best-selling novelist Mike Noonan is still grieving. Unable to write and plagued by vivid nightmares set at the western Maine summer house he calls Sara Laughs, Mike reluctantly returns to the lakeside getaway. There, he finds his beloved Yankee town held in the grip of a powerful millionaire, Max DeVore, whose vindictive purpose is to take his 3-year-old granddaughter, Kyra, away from her widowed mother, Maddie. As Mike is drawn into Maddie and Kyra's struggle, he falls in love with both of them and is also drawn into the mystery of Sarah's laugh. Now the sight of ghostly visitations and escalating terrors. What are the forces that have been unleashed here? And what do they want of Mike Noonan? And guys, it takes us back to 1998. This is Bag of Bones. Let's begin, like always, guys, to talk about what makes it good or bad. Because, guys, it's a very, very misrepresented book in the kingdom, I think. A lot of people have lots of negative things to say about this, and I think it's a lot more good than even I remembered on my first reading. And I think a part of that has to deal with me being of an older age, and I think that being kind of the sweet spot for readers of this book. So with the good, I think this is probably the creepiest book he's written at this timeline. He had written since it. It probably was because he really started diving deep into family trauma and drama and realistic stuff. He was trying to ground himself as a writer, be a drama, be maybe somewhat of a thriller writer a little bit, but it inched further and further away from the horror. And this is the first one in a while where I felt like, okay, he's actually really, really just leaning into the frights and the scares here. Now, I know Desperation got a little creepy and things like that, and I said I do feel like he went for it in that book, but this is the first one where it just full on feels like, okay, this is some blood-curdling stuff. This is some scary, shivers up your spine moments, I think. And that's kind of something I felt very, very welcoming. And I didn't recall that in my first read. Like I said, my first reading of this, it was like, okay, look, I'm 21 years old. I'm not married. I don't know what it's like to be widowed. Obviously, I still don't know what it's like to be widowed, thank God. But I couldn't relate to the guy going through his midlife crisis or trying to put his life back together at that point in his life. So I think that's why it clicked with me a little more this time. Whereas I just kind of completely just erased the jumps and the scares from my memory. But there's a lot of them, guys. There really is some good, chilling stuff. I mean, like the part where you're wanting to look underneath the bed for monsters. It's got stuff just that creepy, I think. So it's done very, very well. And I just didn't recall it being quite so chilling, So that was very, very welcome on this reread. It's just a really great ghost story. So, I mean, if you're into things like that, I think you're going to be quite happy with it. If you aren't really into the ghost stuff, it might not be for you. But to me, this felt like the precursor for what he was eventually going to write in Lacey's story. Kind of the roles are kind of flipped, whereas Lacey's story, it is, the author that dies and his widow, where this one it is the author whose wife dies. So it is kind of reversed there, but I feel like this was a little more, I'd say, grounded in Lacey's story, which is amazing you say that when it is a ghost story. But I'll talk about Lacey's story when I get to it. But I do feel like he captures grief and loss and kind of like that widow trying to put their life back together, trying to move on with her life. That's always something he's been very great at, is dealing with grief and loss, obviously going all the way back to Pet Sematary. I think he's been like one of the best ever at doing it. But with this, it's just that whole sense of how long does it take for you to accept that, you're going to get up, you're going to go downstairs, and that person that you've seen every day for, blank number of years just isn't there. They aren't walking through that door. That's something that's hard to accept. You keep thinking, okay, it's a bad dream I'm going to wake up from, and they're just gonna go, hey, they just came out of the bedroom, they were taking a shower or something like that, and it's coming to that realization that person's never gonna walk through that door again. That's really, really tough. But he always does really capture that really, really well. I think he projects some of his own fears in his book. This is something Stephen always does. You know, he always he loves to write his protagonist as an author and things like that. So he sticks with what he knows, and I think a lot of these things he bases off of experience. I think he's projecting some of his own fears here. While usually in this time span he'd been projecting alcoholism, alcoholicism. You know what I'm trying to say. Being an alcoholic, recovering from alcoholism. No one ever told me that being able to speak was actually necessary to do this whole booktube thing. But I think what I'm saying is he projecting some of his fears in this is having writer's block and not being able to meet deadlines, because he is very much talking about how you've got to try to stay ahead of your competition. If there are other writers similar to you in your same genre, or kind of has the same reader base as you, and they're putting out books every single year consistently, and you're not, you're going to be forgotten. One bad year, you're going from the top 10 seller to the bottom 25 or so. And I think that's something that he has fear of. Yeah, he has fear of writer's block. I think any author is going to have fear of writer's block. But with this, it's like a lot of authors do have that 4 or 5 books they kind of keep on the back burner in case they do struggle with something like this, or they do want to take some time off. And with this, it's like a ticking clock with that. He's hoping that his writer's block is going to he's going to recover from it before he runs out these books he already has kind of just waiting in the safe to give to his publisher. So signing the pressures of signing a new deal, and having like a book limit and things like that. It's just stuff that you can see, obviously, as an author is going to deal with the publisher. Those things are kind of written in here are really good. But the first half of the book is Mike trying to move on with his life, like I said. But that's the part that's really, really good. He does that so good. It does go to crazy town a bit in this book. But again, I've always said, I think saying that a Stephen King book gets a little weird is like saying that the sky sometimes gets a little blue. I love it when Stephen King goes for it. I mean, that's why I love his stuff, because he comes up with very, very original ideas. There is some stuff in the back half of the book, though, I'm like, I don't know where you got that from. And all the time, I always joke, and it's not anything you really should joke about, but I'm always like, was he using it again? That was the kind of thing where I think, this is what I love about Stephen King, because he comes up with these ideas that no one else ever comes up with. And it's either it's going to be a hit or a miss for you. Mostly a hit for me, but for most of the beginning of this book, the first half, I think, the whole dealing with moving on with your life is the part that I think that clicked with me just a little more than the back half, where it gets just a bit nutty. Same thing happened with Rose Madder. I liked the first half when it was, that part of life, trying to put your life back together, because I think Stephen King's a very, very good slice of life writer. But when he tries to just go for it, this one's much more grounded, I think, than Rose Madder, where it was like, I don't know where that went to. This one, I feel like, as far as it goes, it never goes to the part of like, is this even the same book anymore? So I feel like he does, kind of have a little bit of, he just holding himself back a little bit and being like, okay, let's not go off the rails a little bit. Let's be a little reserved with it. And he does kind of keep it there. But I do say I like the first half of this book better than the second half. But as for the not so necessarily bad, but maybe the not so good, some things that might stick out to you. Besides the scares, I think the second half is a mixed bag. Like I said, it does go a little crazy. When the main plot of the story becomes Maddie's custody battle, that's not the book I want to read anymore. That's not interesting to me. It goes on a little too long. If that had been like a subplot, cool. But when it comes like the main plot of the story, I'm like, no, I want to know more about this haunted house that you're in, Mike. Can we get back to that stuff? I don't care about this stranger who's in a custody battle that you're dealing with. It's great that you feel like you've got to be a savior in that kind of, it's normal. It's normal. You see someone in trouble, you want to help them. I think that's great. But it does need to take over your story, and it just, I don't know, it goes on a little too long. And with this, guys, this is going to be, these things happen. These things happen. You do see people who do become widowed. They do end up like dating or remarrying someone much, much younger than them. The Mike and Maddie stuff, very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. It's really hard for some people to be able to get through, because he's 40, she's 20. All the time he's like, oh, she's just so young, I just can't think of her that way. But the whole time he's thinking of her that way. These things happen in real life, guys, and Stephen's never going to cover your eyes from those things. He's always just going to go right in, because Stephen loves to make you uncomfortable, and it'll do that. I'm just saying that might be a little hard for some people, that relationship. And he writes some wet dream sequences in here, guys, that are the type that, like, when I was reading it, I was putting the book down, like looking around, making sure no one was like looking at me or something, because it's wow. wow. It's like I know some people that were listening to this on audiobook and they're like, that was disturbing. So again, that's it. And a lot of people say this book's too long. I mean, it's 500 pages. That's pretty average for King. I don't think it went off as long as like Desperation. Desperation went on too long, and then I felt like Regulators was too short. With this, I feel like it's a good balance. To me, 500 is about a good length for this size story. So I don't think that's a really criticism that I have for it. But let's talk about why I think that maybe you guys should read it. I think if you like those stories about a spouse trying to move on with their life, it would be for you. A spouse losing their spouse, that would be something. If that's something that's happened to you in real life, it might be very, very tough. Just like I said with Rose Madder, if it's someone who's, if you've been through domestic abuse, it might be something that's just too close. You can't read it, but it can also be therapy, I think. There are a lot of people, just like with Rose Madder, that told Stephen King that book gave them the courage to leave their abusive spouse. This is the book that a lot of people have told him that, it helped them move on, after becoming widowed. So it's one of those things. I feel like it depends on what's happened in your real life, if it's going to click for you. For me, I haven't experienced being widowed, and I hope I don't. I'm going to be selfish. I hope I go first, but I can't really relate there. But what I can relate to is just someone who feels like they are at a crossroads in life and they're trying to put their life back together. And you find something to kind of bury yourself in, be it helping someone get custody of their child, be it writing a new book, something like that. You find a task that is so different from your normal life that you try to move on with it. And I think he does do a good job of capturing that. And if that's something that you're into, I think you'll really, really dig it. If you like just a good ghost story, I think you'll be hearing noises in your attic. It's that kind of good ghost story. It does have some moments where it's like, wow, that's quite freaky, and the imagery will never leave my head. But if you're middle-aged like me, I think you're going to appreciate it more. Like I said, reading it as a 21-year-old, I didn't get near as much out of it as I did reading it at almost 45 years old. As for my final thoughts, guys, I'd still argue that this is a better book than most of the King fans give it credit for. I constantly see it listed in the bottom third in a lot of King fans' rankings. I really, truly believe, guys, that they have gotten it mixed up. I really believe that they remember that awful A&E adaptation they did with Pierce Brosnan, and that's their memory of this book, because that movie was not good. It was not good. And I feel like a lot of people have just kind of replaced this book with that movie and think that this book is just that bad. This book is leaps and bounds better than that A&E miniseries was. In fact, avoid it altogether if you can. I mean, if you've read this, if you haven't read it, just avoid it. Love Pierce Brosnan? Love him? No. Bad. This is, like I said, constantly ranked towards the bottom, but I would not put it there. I wouldn't put it like in my top third or nothing, but it'd sit firmly in the middle. I'd say it's probably as good as any of his 90s work was, right there around with Insomnia or Rose Madder. I wouldn't put it quite up there with like Dolores Claiborne or Needful Things or Gerald's Game, but I'd say it's just right below there. It's still pretty good. It's definitely one that I would say it is going to get a recommend from me, where there's some of the others in this one, I'm like, I wouldn't bust my TBR for it, but I wouldn't throw it in the garbage either. I think this one's, hey, if you are on a schedule of reading King books like I have been, yeah, I wouldn't skip it. Much, much better than Desperation or Regulators, in my opinion. I know a lot of people got a lot of feedback in that Desperation review that people liked it a lot more than me, so don't take my word for it. But let's close this down, guys, and talk about some Multiverse Connections, because there are a few. Light spoiler warning, like I always say, I don't think this is going to spoil anything for you as a whole. But if you don't want to know anything about the Easter egg connections of the multiverse, hey, bookmark this, come back later after you've read the entire multiverse. But some of the multiverse connections that I picked up, and I don't pick up all of them, guys, so if you have some more, please let me know down below. Dark Tower, obviously. Sara Laughs, that's a twinner to Kara Laughs, which is the Turtleback Lane in the later half of the Dark Tower series. And obviously, I think that makes Mike Stephen King's twinner, right? I don't know. I might have to go with Jaime. Jaime Escalante might be able to... Jaime Escalante. Jaime Escalante is in Stand and Deliver, one of my wife's favorite movies. And Jaime and Fuego over on the horror show. I think he would be able to tell me maybe if that is actually the case. But as always, the number 19 does pop up quite frequently. Insomnia, Ralph from Insomnia. Ralph actually does show up in this book. He actually talks to Mike in a diner at one scene in here. And Joe Weiser, the pharmacist in Insomnia, he also does appear in this book. So it's a place, I guess it's kind of a tie-in with it here. As it doesn't take place in Derry, but there's mentions to Derry numerous times. I think Mike even drives through Derry at what point. But yeah, it is always a big one. Anytime you're up there in the northeast corners of Maine, you're always going to be talking about it. Bill Denbrough, Stuttering Bill, If you know at this time in the Kingverse, he is actually a very, very successful author, and you do see a character reading one of his books in here, and it doesn't take place in Derry, like I said, but gets a few mentions. But that's all I got for Multiverse Connections, guys. But overall, I feel like this is a book that's been wholly misunderstood. I kind of went into it kind of, guess I got to do this one, but hey, after this, I'll finally get back to Dreamcatchers after this. We'll talk about that soon. But with this one, guys, it was a lot more fun on my reread. I really did enjoy it. And like I said, I do feel like your life experience matters a little bit on this one. But I would love to know what you guys thought about Bag of Bones. Why don't you drop in the comments and let me know, and I will talk to you there.